Hi, this is Bob Samuels from Tech Connector. Thank you for joining us. This is a very candid with Bob. Our special guest, Leslie Allure, is not able to join us today. So I have my co-host and we're going to chat, just a very informal chat about AI-powered ABM, ABX, what we see, what we like, what kind of things that we're interested in and want to share and want to learn about. And this will be a preview of the future events that we'll have going forward. So welcome, co-host. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Bob.
Yeah. So let's kick off with some self-introductions. Melanie, if you can share a little bit about yourself, your background about ABM and such, and any fun fact that we wouldn't know about you if we looked at LinkedIn.
Sure. Let's see. I am a founder of Strategic Media. We are a media strategy, planning, and buying agency. And we have been in business for, since 2004. And I personally have been in the media industry for over 30 years.
Since you were 12.
I love that comment, Bob. It always makes me feel good for the rest of the day. And let's see if I can think of something different than the last time I did one of your awesome podcasts. Not that interesting. I'm a cyclist. I love to bike. I am trying to do some training for a ride. I'd love to do some riding with my husband in Europe. So I'm just trying to fit that into my schedule.
That's good stuff.
Train and yeah, that's it. Thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, my pleasure. Was it super hot up there yesterday? Because it was rough down here in the South Bay.
Yep, it's been pretty warm.
Yeah. So no biking yesterday or super early, I guess.
No biking.
Yeah. Okay. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Sean, too. Melanie and I have already chatted a bit. So I'm Jeff LaRue, CEO of a small consulting firm, and I have a varied history in enterprise sales and marketing strategy, thought leadership, specifically all B2B related. Doing some interesting projects with clients right now for B2B demand gen, and really caught up and interested in the AI craze and what's going on there and how that's going to really significantly impact business and marketing in particular.
Excellent. Any fun facts?
Nobody ever asked me that question. I'll sit on that one for the time being. How's that?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you.
I think that is a hard question. I have, as you were talking, I was like, what is my fun fact? And I don't know if I have one. It's nice to meet you, Jeff. I am a strategic marketer, B2C, B2B, worked in the Valley, worked in Los Angeles, live in Los Angeles. I am passionate about artificial intelligence, mostly on the knowledge acquisition side. How does a machine augment what we're doing? I'm passionate about how artificial intelligence can accelerate scientific discovery. So that's sort of where my heart lies, even though most of my work is in traditional marketing and traditional strategic advising. My fun fact, I live in a section of Los Angeles that is far from the stereotype. It's called Topanga. And I recently, basically living in like woods and mountains. So like it's really like transporting yourself outside of like whatever you think Hollywood is or whatever you think Malibu or Santa Monica is. Like just imagine like the woods of Northern California, albeit far fewer redwoods. And my fun fact is that I recently learned how to identify what a hawk sounds like, because we have these hawks continuously circling overhead and it sounds like a screech, as it turns out.
What does it sound like? What does it sound like, Sean?
I'm not going to do the sound.
We're going to get into a Dumb and Dumber episode.
Yeah, I will ruin this. I will ruin the audio quality of it, but it is a very distinctive screech.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. So, what is the? Thank you for all. What's the best definition to you of AI? Because I think the reality is it's not really artificial intelligence; it's more machine learning that we're talking about.
Well, I think we're talking about both. So I think we had machine learning for a very long time, and AI was a promise that many experts in AI thought was not going to be fulfilled for 10 to 30 years. And I, as someone who was in the process when those prognostications were being thrown out, I was in the education space. I was founding a public school, and I was sort of raising the red flag that, like, hey, this is coming sooner than you think. If you look at the trend line, AI is going to be here, and it's going to significantly impact education. It's going to significantly impact the opportunities that kids have. So I think machine learning, there are a lot of different definitions that experts will give. Machine learning is essentially turning data into a function that can then allow for some amount of prediction. I sort of define artificial intelligence is the turning data, usually far wider data, so that could be visual, that could be auditory, that could be location-based data, into some automated decisions that then accomplish some goal. And I think that those are two different. So you could be a machine learning engineer but know nothing about or not being effective at artificial intelligence. So that's I would say it's here. I would say that, like, we are talking about AI because we have systems now that are able to sort of think without human intervention, as long as you give them a goal. And I think the future, and I think this will impact marketing writ large, is that we are currently in a world of prompt engineering where you have where you're still as the sort of driver defining the goals. So it used to be that, you know, we all had manual transmission cars. We all drove them. We were 100% responsible for the car moving in every direction. And then we sort of had like cruise control, where that was a bit like machine learning, where we tell it, this is where you want to go. We were still in the driver's seat. And now we're in, you know, sort of the prompt engineering world, where it's like we're living in Uber world, where it's like, go over here, but we're still telling it where to go. And I think the world we're entering very soon is one of connected devices and connected things, where we give it a very overarching goal, and it learns how to solve the problems that we would normally prompt engineer for. So I think that's where we're headed next. And you look at things like LangChain, which is a Python library that connects large language models and other models together, and it gives you some insight into where we're going, I think.
Beautiful. So we're not ready yet to sit out in the back seat and hang out and drink pina coladas yet. We still need to manage this tool.
Well, I think it depends on the job you're trying to do. I mean,
I think that's a great analogy, Sean. The car analogy. I'm going to remember that. I'm curious to know, when you said at some point, or we don't need the humans to actually guide the machine. I'd like to understand a little bit more about that, because that scares me a little. I mean, the marketing as a whole is appealing to humans. I know that AI, well, I don't know, but I understand that AI can have some human-like, you know, characteristics, but removing the humans is a little bit frightening to me, and I'm also very excited to hear about how it can help make sales teams and customer service and how it is making it very more productive, and allowing people like BDRs, for instance, to spend more time strategizing on their next big sales win, or what is the right account list to go after in ABM, and spending less time with, you know, the manual processes of, you know, running their teams, their business development teams. So I guess I'm just curious, you know, this whole human element, does that make anyone feel a little bit uncomfortable?
I guess I don't know that it makes me feel uncomfortable. I mean, maybe I don't see myself in that role, so I'm not like too scared, but like, I think, you know, you look at something like responding to customers, and we have sort of a traditional, let's just talk about like a phone conversation that we're having with customers. Like you may have 1,000 sales reps reaching out to people and trying to drum up business, right? So you've got, I presume, and I'm no BDR sales manager, so like I'm a little out of my depth, so everybody here is going to be far more knowledgeable than I on that. But you have, let's just say you have 100 sales reps, and I presume that you have some kind of normal distribution of success. You have some people that are not so good, you have some people that are very good, and you have probably the bulk that are in the middle. And then I suspect that given the way the world works, you're sort of either trying to upskill the ones at the lower end or cut them off, and then the bell curve shifts over time and continues, but you're hopefully moving it to the right where everybody's being more successful. But you take someone who's very successful and you take someone in the middle, and I'm guessing there's probably a weekly meeting or maybe a daily meeting where they say, well, what worked today, what's working, and then there's maybe like training. Imagine that sort of education happening 1,000 times per second, where you're getting some digital rep, and they already have voice that sounds realistic. There was a video that got taken down. I'm not sure if I got it taken down, but this guy basically built what's called an auto GPT system where multiple systems are connected, and he basically had the thing order pizza for himself, but he didn't do it using like Instacart or anything. He actually had the system call Pizza Hut or whatever, call Pizza Hut, order the pizza, have a live conversation with a human, and then have it delivered. Actually, I think he had it picked up. So you already have phone conversations. Google showed that a number of years ago where they had a very, very lifelike voice. So you could imagine having, thousands of these conversations with these AI agents who don't have to have a weekly meeting. They're sort of getting smarter in real time, and then everybody's up leveling at the same time. And when I say everybody, it's one AI that's generating all these conversations and learning from it. And then when you talk about account-based marketing or account-based experience, you're now layering in all of this other data that gives you context for these calls. Or when you're talking about account-based experience, you're having, they're sharing videos, they're sharing images, they're sharing text, they're going back and forth on email, whatever the account is natively interested in. And again, account is not just like the one person that you had that first touch with, it's every decision maker within that company. That all of those conversations are managed by a single intelligent system that's then continuously adapting, not just to what that account is saying, but all of the accounts are saying in real time to sort of optimize and saying, well, and I'm making this a very simplistic sort of thing, but like, people who are interested in furniture sales, we can be successful by going in this direction. People who are interested in whatever, sailboat sales are going in this other direction. So we can adapt on the fly and have all of these coordinated conversations, and can get continuously smarter over time at speeds that like humans just don't really adapt to. So I think that entire business will be sort of impacted by that. And you've got, again, when you look at like large language models like GPT-4 and whatever Google comes out with their new thing with DeepMind, I think when you also add in things like generative imagery and now increasingly generative video, you're now having not just a text-based conversation or a voice-based conversation, you're having a multimodal, multimedia conversation with these people. That this becomes like a very powerful tool for sales. And I don't know how I as a sales rep would compete in that world.
Yeah, so really good points there, Sean. To me, it's about what tasks are repetitive. And a lot of sales and marketing tasks are in many ways repetitive, and some of them require unique human insights along the way. And so it's really a combination, but the application of generative AI to these business challenges and how to automate things. One of the areas that I'm really curious to see is in larger enterprises, they really are overstacked with various SaaS-based apps. And I'm really curious to see how generative AI is going to eliminate potentially up to half their MarTech stack. And so that's where I'm really trying to understand the application of generative AI, the specific elimination of automation tools that are no longer required. So that's another area that's of particular interest to me. Bob, you had waved your hand earlier. So I don't want to play moderator on your podcast, but I'm curious what your thoughts were on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was raising my hand in agreement with Melanie that it's scary about just sitting in the back seat of the car and letting it drive and not really have the human oversight. You know, to me, there's a difference between in my mind and my hope, it's up to us to master these tools and use them to to better everything, but to let them take over is very scary to me.
I just want to add, I think that it's one thing to say that the brains behind AI, the folks that understand it, the marketers, the technologists, but the end user, I think we have to keep in mind the end user. The end user knows this is happening all around them. And I think it is creating a little bit, when I say end user, I mean the consumer, maybe to some extent the B2B buyer as well, but also in the B2C world, this type of customer service AI assisted chatbots and phone conversations with AI. I think some people that I've spoke to have figured out that's what's happening and there isn't a real person. And I think that's okay, but I think that we need some education out there to really bring people up to speed on what's happening in the world. And it is moving fast. You're absolutely right, John. It's moving very fast. And I think as marketers and technologists and software engineers and whatnot, that's all fine and dandy. And it's very helpful making these teams very much more productive. And we can't compete with it as humans. There's absolutely no question. It's coming. There's no question about it. It's here and it's coming to a greater extent. But I'd love to see some education to the broader, the broader world about it.
Speaking about that education, Jeff, I'm curious what you think are the most vulnerable components of the MarTech stack. When you sort of saying, I'm interested in seeing and have these large enterprises have these big MarTech stacks, which do you think are the most immediately vulnerable to sort of being disrupted?
So the answer is, I'm not sure yet. I have some thoughts.
Is anything smelling like it's in danger? Do you smell smoke somewhere?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the marketing campaign platforms, the Marketos of the world are really in many respects redundant in terms of the functionality. I think there's a lot of overlap between a lot of different systems, and you're going to be seeing, personal opinion, surge in functionality of a lot of the niche products, and they are going to displace I'll call it the burdensome platform applications that require enormous amounts of human effort to manage and operate them. So personally, I'm working on a project right now where we're automating an entire workflow. Bob, I had mentioned this to you briefly the other week when we spoke, but in effect, what we're doing is we're automating the cycle of market research, targeting specific accounts, creating unique profiles, embedding that in Salesforce. There's a commercial insights module, and using an integration with ChatGPT to analyze data from about 500 sources, come up with unique messaging, and then wrap that through the enterprise right back out to a campaign with customized messaging per account. We demonstrated that a couple of weeks ago to a client or a potential client, and the comment back was really insightful, was the complete elimination of whole departments in terms of the workflow and the functionality. And so while I think that that was overly optimistic in the near term, I think that longer term, there are going to be opportunities where you can combine elements. And I love the parallel that you drew with the Link Library, Sean. You're going to see, in my opinion, again, automation and the literal elimination of a lot of platform technologies, which are no longer necessary, and in fact, get in the way of generating revenue, generating leads, generating engagement for the enterprise. And so I think it's the big platform guys, personally, that are going to be in jeopardy.
What about the people? What about do they need less humans to run the sales teams and BDR?
Yeah, so I already see a lot of soft layoffs in both sales and marketing. You know, people focused on, oh, well, it's performance based, but a lot of teams are starting to see the pruning begin, where they, you know, what they don't realize is that if you embrace the technology and master it, you have the capability to be of high value and in high demand. But a lot of folks, sort of like with the automation of machines in manufacturing, those repetitive functions were eliminated, and new and much more interesting roles were created at a much more rapid scale. So you have to retool yourself. But yes, traditional roles and functions are going to be transformed, and you know, and Melanie, to your point, very, very quickly. We saw how with the internationalization of our economies, we lost a lot of manufacturing jobs, and a bunch of older factory workers were simply eliminated, and they weren't able to retool. We're going to see something similar in the high-tech sector, or in the knowledge worker sector field, where a lot of people who are unable emotionally or materially to retool themselves are going to be left behind. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality. And again, my opinion,
That's why we
that's
need the
coming.
education. We need, that's why we need the education. These folks need to understand what they're up against and to be retooled. I love that word, retrained, whatever.
Yep.
To learn how they're going to still be able to, you know, have a seat in, you know, their department and help make this all happen. Sorry. Just
Agreed.
being a
Hey,
dead
I like the
horse.
new backdrop, Bob.
Thank you.
I think we should create a thing where Bob changes his backdrop every so often, and we just have to be paying attention enough to sort
Make
of.
sure you're paying attention.
That's right.
Exactly.
And don't forget, Bob, too, you can put animations in, so you can do a mustache and a little goatee and add little horns or whatever you want to your image. But I just wanted to touch base, Bob. I see we're over time, and I apologize for yakking too much there. Somebody pulled my string and got me all wound up talking about it. But
I think that was Melanie.
yes.
No, I think it was Sean. Sean is so insightful with AI. I want to spend an hour with Sean just understanding it. You know, like I need to be educated more. I've done my research, but I feel like I'm so far from understanding all the.
So from a business perspective, couple of content recommendations. One is McKinsey has some great content on their website, as does Bain. But the person that I've really done a deep dive on is Barbara Gray. and she's an investment analyst out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And she's analyzed AI and business disruptions specifically for the last several years. She's one of the top investment analysts in Canada. And she has come up with a concept called a value pyramid structure, where she analyzes not just business strategy, but now AI business strategies. And she has some extraordinary insights on how a business needs to operate and what they need to be doing with respect to their strategy and their valuation. So those are the content sites. There was also a really good article last week in The Verge, where they talked about the specific things, the market signals, as I called them, that they've picked up on that are indicating a real world change in the internet itself. And so very informative article, very, very interesting in terms of the key takeaways and stuff. And I'll share, Bob knows I'm a note taker, and I like to summarize things. So I summarized that article, and I'll send that summary over to Bob, and then, or actually, I think I have all your emails. I can send that out if you want, Sean. It may be
Yeah, and we can
you,
publish it with this podcast. I think that's great, and more information about Barbara. I think that sounds interesting.
Sure, and Barbara does webinars and has a newsletter, et cetera, and she is just has an extraordinary different perspective from an investor on AI. And she's actually even modeled what the financial impact will be on businesses. And she has stock picks. I mean, it's unbelievable. The companies that she really likes, for example, are like Dropbox and Adobe. And companies she's concerned about, and I can't really, I don't want to speak, I'm not speaking for her, but she's expressed concerns about Google, for example, as I'm sure a number of other analysts have as well. But she is an extraordinary intellect and really puts it into a framework so that you can not just understand it today, but analyze the disruption to business and industry moving forward.
That's interesting because Adobe owns Marketo, right? So Marketo is on your concerned list and Adobe's on your hot list. And Adobe more on the
difference between my personal opinion, which is almost worthless, but
yeah, I kind of mix those up a little. Yes, but Adobe getting into the video and the picture, which is interesting.
I think Adobe is very well positioned. I would add on to your list, if you're not familiar with Kathy Wood, she is an investor with, well, she owns her own disruptive investment fund. She's sort of, you can't watch Bloomberg or CNBC without having seen her at least once. Her ARK investment, they put out this, I think it was a 300 slide disruptive technology investment sort of analysis. Obviously AI was in there, but they cover things that range from virtual reality to robotics to all of these disruptive technologies. So not just AI. So she's another person to put on your list. And she also, they did a huge amount of research, and they have this free thing that you can download. And it's crazy. Like she positions her investment fund as, I'm what you invest in if you don't have the money to invest in a VC fund. So she's very good. But I think it's interesting you think Marketo's in trouble. As someone who consulted for Marketo, I have a little bit of a soft spot for them.
Me too.
But yeah, I'm not, I think Adobe is very well positioned with Firefly, that would just recently came out. And I think they're actually better positioned than pretty much anyone else, because they have all of these platform services and because they have all of this unique data. I mean, I think if I'm starting a company in 2023, or I own one, I'm the CEO of one, I would be worried about my business, and I would reframe my business from one of I'm just serving my customers, which still remains the core, to I have to be generating a unique type of data, and it can't be text. Like right now, you look at Google, you look at Facebook, everyone who's developing large language models that have sort of brought AI to the forefront. All of these companies are have huge repositories of text. You're never going to beat them with text. And actually text was the low-hanging fruit, because anyone can go through the internet and just sort of scrape almost an unlimited amount of text as long as you have enough money. So text data is no longer going to be a differentiator. That large language model has sailed, at least in my opinion. So now you have to say, okay, well, text is not a thing. I'll be able to sort of buy that as a service. Now, what unique data do I produce? And I think that's where some of the companies, Melanie, that we were discussing, or some of the futures, is like, what data do our customers have that's unique, and how can we leverage that data? I think the future, when you have deep relationships with customers, like you were saying, Melanie, I think the opportunity exists. And Jeff, this is something that I think you're doing implicitly, is you're building digital twins of your customers. And that is and you're not just building them digital twins, but you're building digital twins in context. And what I mean by that is in context of whatever business problem you're trying to solve. So if I'm trying to help people travel, I have customer information about people in the context of wanting to travel. And that could be a unique differentiator for me, as long as I can leverage that data to then generate really compelling marketing and really compelling new products. And I think that's where businesses survive, because my personal opinion is, if you want to, we talked, many years ago, how every company, if they want to survive, needs to be an information company, or this or that, the other thing. Now, I think every company, if they want to survive, has to be a research company, has to be an AI research company. You have to be doing some form of AI research, or you won't survive, because it would be so easy once a competitor like Adobe comes in, or Google, with their resources and with the artificial intelligence that allows them to move at light speed. If you don't have that existing data locked down, and you don't have that existing data sort of like driving some business results for you, it'll just be too easy for them to come in. There were barriers to markets previously, and now the barriers to market entry is rapidly falling. I will say, I would not cut out Google, and I have no vested interest in saying that, but I would say that Google is not as, I think Google had some missteps in 2023.
Yeah.
But I do think they're going to come out with something very strong in the end, in the same way that, and I can't predict this. I mean, obviously, like you said, Jeff, we're not in the prediction business here. Otherwise, we'd be investors. But I do think everybody has sort of, how like a movie will go around, and you'll sort of become focused, and like one character will sort of like go off on like a side quest, and you'll forget about that character. And then like, you're like, oh, how the hero is going to save the day. And it's like, looks insurmountable. And then that person's side quest has ended, and they come in and they save the day and they slay the dragon. I kind of think DeepMind is that group, because DeepMind is, and Google, I mean, like, let's not count out Google. I mean, Google's got like some of the world's best engineers, but like, and scientists too. But I think DeepMind has done some stuff that has, prior to ChatGPT, shocked the world. And like, it was weird that they went silent. I mean, if you haven't seen the documentary AlphaGo, it is free on YouTube and on Netflix, I think, but it is insane. And it was like a predictor. The postscript to AlphaGo, AlphaZero, then what they did to beat that, I forget the other game that they played that was more like a strategy game. And then after that, they did AlphaFold, which is quite frankly just revolutionary. I mean, we'll all live longer because of their work with AlphaFold. I would not count them out. They are extraordinary.
And I don't want to. She just expressed some concerns about their advertising business, so I don't want to speak for her. But I love what you said about proprietary data. And the CEO of Delta was on CNBC last week and made the comment, "We're a data business." And they know something about travel and air travel specifically, but he viewed them as a data business. And I think in addition to the proprietary data of an individual company, if you can figure out and model cross vertical searches with respect to what combination of data from potential partners creates really unique modeling opportunities and value creation opportunities, that's where the long tail for a lot of this will hit. Again, my opinion, but it's the combination of your own proprietary data plus a well understood model of what other proprietary data sources we could bring together with ours as a business to deliver value and service to the industry or to the marketplace. And that really will be a key part of moving forward with businesses. But I mean, look today at Amazon, 40% of their retail sales are generated by their AI historically. Yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead,
You
Melanie.
mentioned partnerships, and I came across a company I was really interested in called Conversica, and they're not paying me to say this, but they have a really interesting model, and they also are partnering with a lot of companies like Salesforce, and I've seen, you know, a couple of other partnerships. And so I see these big companies, these Googles of the world, they are partnering with these AI and data, you know, data management companies. So I think that's really they're on board, but I still go back to and maybe this is a topic for one of the topics for the next discussion, which is any new technology. Go back. I was part of the Microsoft tablet PC when they brought it to life way back when I was at working with Universal McCann. And at that time we were like, how are we going to create this new technology and make and market it and promote it and have the consumers, the end users, the, you know, not just the influencers, but the broader world, you know, jump on the bandwagon and accept it and feel comfortable with it. Something simple as when retargeting became a thing. I don't know how many people outside of marketing you talk to. I talked to a lot of people that were a little bit freaked out by the fact that they went on a car site and then all of a sudden they're getting an ad on their phone, or they've basically talked about cat litter. This happened to me. I talked about cat litter and the cat litter ad showed up in one of my social media feeds. It frightens people, you know? And so I think we have to also think about the consumers, and maybe more in the B2C discussion, not a B2B discussion, but being comfortable with not having as much of that human interaction from a customer service rep, you know, having it be a bot or AI. The AI voice actually is so interesting because it really sounds like a human. And they can also listen to your voice and understand, which of course that's been going on for a long time. So they recognize who we are when we pick up the phone. They know it's us because they know our voice. But I just want to talk at some point later on, maybe about how we can get the consumers to adapt to this new world that we're in and that we're getting further into.
I think that's a really interesting point. I actually think it has the opportunity, artificial intelligence in general, in combination with other technologies, has the ability to take customer service and, you know, if you look at and supercharge it in a way that's hard to imagine now. If you look at, like, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the life that we're all living now is sort of like or go back to the 20s. We're all living the Great Gatsby life, right? Well, not all of us. I mean, everybody on this call, most likely, everybody who has the ability to sort of like connect via Zoom is living effectively a Great Gatsby life relative to what at least my grandparents were living in the 1920s. And like basically, if they knew the life that I was leading, they'd be like, that's not possible. Are you a robber baron? And I think, you know, and when you think about like the level of customer service that we take for granted now, like, oh, stuff magically appears at my doorstep after a day and then just sort of like wave my hand and command it to appear. Like, are you a wizard? Like, we are all living in like sort of this Gatsbyan sort of like world where like we like even the king, even like King, Louis the 14th, like would be, and we look at like sort of like Elon Musk and all these other people who have like far more than money than I, and we're like, oh, their life must be so much better. But we are so much better than the kings back in the day. And so I think when you think about like customer service, it's like I still think that's a sore spot. There's like 3 or 4 businesses that I'm like, you really over deliver. Like Trader Joe's, it's like, oh, cool, I get to talk to you at the checkout counter. That's cool. You're nice. And that only stands out because everybody else is so terrible at it. But imagine a situation like you're the president of the United States. It's like, I want a cheeseburger, or I want like, bring me the X, Y, and Z report. Like you just pick up the phone. Like think about like we can have the potential to reimagine customer service in like a radically new way, because what AI does is it compresses intelligence into smaller spaces and smaller timescales. So I can get whatever I want from that business at any time. Like oh, you're closed at 2 a.m. when I've got insomnia. Luckily, I don't generally have that, but like you have like, I have like I don't even have to worry about that. Oh, this thing is like, I have an all-nighter that I'm pulling to sort of do this project, but I don't know X, Y, and Z. Oh, you can answer it. I don't know if anyone here programs. If you haven't tried GitHub Copilot,
Yeah, yeah.
it is freaking amazing. It is, I mean, as someone who loves neuroscience, I was about to say something like it's near sentient, but like you type in one thing and it knows exactly what you want to type. I'm like, and as someone who's like a very novice programmer, I'm like, I've all of a sudden become a superhero. I literally have, because I don't program to execute. I program to learn, so learn how to program. But like, I cannot tell you, it just basically programs for you. I'm not sure how a programmer, like, I'm not sure how that works. And it gets to the point where you can actually type in the same way, like, hey, I want this section to do X, Y, and Z, and it will literally create a section for you. And recently I was at GPT-4 and I had this like pet projects in the back of my mind for 6 years. And I was like about to go to bed, but I'm like, I wonder if GPT-4 could program this up for me. I literally typed in a text prompt that described the app I was looking for, and it created the app. Like, that's insane. So I think when you look at like what is possible, or what is going to be possible with customer service, we should not be thinking, well, how do we like make customer service better? Or how do we make account-based experiences like more efficient or better than what they were before, or incrementally better? I think we should fundamentally rethink the process from first principles, knowing that like, what would we do? I mean, what would we do if this system could read someone's mind? And that's basically possible. In the same way, Melly, that you were talking about, like, this thing just kind of listened to me and then like it, whatever, like and started selling me what I was kind of talking about. Like, that is the kind of level of prescience that I think these systems can have. And I don't think anyone's going to reject them. And in fact, I think this is at the core of why AI is unstoppable, because it will be so good at serving you. Like, does anyone, and I'm talking about the attendees or someone who's watching this later on YouTube or LinkedIn, does anyone, and I'm new to, like, I'm relatively new to California, but I've been here long enough to remember that people used to carry around these big books, these like map books, and they would have spirals, and they'd look and they'd be like, oh, I'm in sector whatever. Like, does anyone not use Google Maps or Waze? No. Like, it would be crazy town. The only time you use that is when like your GPS goes down or you forget to charge your phone. And then you're sort of like, well, I'm screwed because I don't have a map. Like, I think people are just going to sort of use it because it's so much better. And there's going to be some rough edges initially, but then you're just not going to be the thing. Like, you brought up Delta, and I was like smiling a little bit because like nobody thinks to themselves, God, you know what I really love? I love air travel. Like, it's just so great. Like, they're like, I tolerate this because it gets me there faster. But now you have this Delta, if I was Delta, I would be not positioning myself as a data company. I'd be positioning myself, I don't even know how it'd be positioned, but it'd be something as like, I'm a luxury transport company, because now luxury transport in any form is possible. It used to be, well, I'm an airline and I need to swim in my lane and whatever, because like, it's so expensive to run an airline. And now you're just, forget about that. Think from the customer, what gets the customer what they want more effectively. And AI can support that.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, and as someone who lives in Los Angeles and sort of has a love-hate relationship with LAX is a disaster. But Delta only takes accountability once I get to Delta's terminal, but that's no longer that, like, they could be thinking more broadly. And if you think about generative AI, and I don't know if I'm about to relay an anecdote that I'm not sure is true, but I'm comfortable relaying it because it is 100% possible. And again, I don't know this is true, so I'm like very cautious about spreading misinformation. But again, this is 100% possible. So the military, as I understand it, was testing some kind of drone technology that was sort of automated, and it gave it a rough goal of like, go attack something or go do whatever. And instead of attacking this thing, it realized that the most efficacious approach was to actually attack the radar, our own radar, or something like this, to attack our radar, because then it would, like, nobody would know that it didn't attack it or something like that. It sort of solved the mission parameters more effectively than actually doing the job that the people intended. And obviously that's something that's relatively easy to engineer. So you want to be careful with what you're engineering and like test it and all these other things and simulate environments. But I think that portends a ability to strategically think. And if Delta sort of, for example, applied that, I suspect that the AI system that was developing strategies, and you mentioned McKinsey, and I can only assume that they're hopefully, not hopefully, because I'm not, like, I don't want McKinsey to dominate the world, but like, you can imagine a situation where you build a strategic AI that sort of says, hey, think about my business more broadly and like outside the box. And all of a sudden it destroys the existing business and rebuilds a new business by looking at all of the other players in that business and where it expects them to evolve. Like, that to me is where we start to go out of the loop, but it's so effective that your investors become really happy that you're doing it. And so people like CEOs and CMOs, people at our level start to get a little bit nervous, like, are we the best position to solve these sort of bigger problems when it comes to these things? And you look at who are the people that survive these transitions, and to me, it's farmers, and it is, ironically, it's farmers because they can feed themselves, and it is investors. And that to me is like where you get to this situation where these investors are going to be pushing, and you look at activist investors like Bob Iger and others, Kathy Wood being another one, where they start to say like, hey, I'm expecting AI level strategic decision making, because it's already happening at the lower level. I'm consulting for a firm, and I basically showed some of the people how we could take their job from basically several hours a week to 5 minutes with the right prompts. And so, and it doesn't eliminate them. I mean, theoretically, they could sort of retool and they could sort of start generating their own prompts. But like the old days of just design and copy and like where everybody had this job for an infinite amount of time, like that's just, that I think those are in danger. But I think all across the watchtower, to quote Jimi Hendrix, there are opportunities for danger. And I think the customers are not going to say no, because in the same way that I don't know that anyone was like, damn it, Waze, you're taking the job of map makers.
Yeah. And you just hit a soft spot for me. I know we're running out of time, but the customers aren't going to say no. I think initially they might, but I think we've done a great job in making consumers comfortable with things like, sharing your location services on your phone, like you mentioned, Maps, Google Maps, with retargeting, with online shopping. I mean, if you think back in the day, people were freaked out about putting their credit card in. Now it's like, you can't do anything without putting your credit card, right? Or giving your information online. And sure, there are a lot of hackers out there. There are a lot of, people that are really concerned about, privacy and getting their information, compromised. But I think that as a society, and I'm a digital marketer, and researcher, and I like to understand kind of where the consumer's head's at, and they're adapting, whatever you want to call it. The influencers are the influencer bubble is growing, and it's becoming more and more. And people like my mother, who is in her 80s, realizes that if she doesn't learn her phone, she's not going to be able to make her medical appointments. She's not going to be able to order her stuff, this and that. So it's hard for the older community too. I mean, that's like a whole nother discussion. But there's also, we live in, we're tech marketers. We understand it, but there's a lot of people out there that don't. But I do feel like we're improving as a consumer. I think people are getting smarter and just realizing they have to, just like companies have to jump on the bandwagon, end users do too, consumers do.
Yeah, I think you nailed it though. But you talked about the putting your credit card in. That was not just Silicon Valley being really good at like creating user experiences, which Silicon Valley is really good at, like just insanely good at. But it was an entire industry saying this is to our collective advantage. Like, think about why you were okay with putting your credit card in there, because banks said, well, if your stuff gets stolen, you won't be destroyed. It was banks saying, hey, look, there's like a lot of opportunity here if people start to buy via e-commerce, because they'll buy a lot more because it's more convenient. So we should be supporting this. And I just think that's the case. Like, people just, as they're losing, their jobs, or as they're trying to retool, like they're just going to have to adapt. Like you said, like
really quickly here, and then I'll shut up. And the history of ATMs in gas stations. I don't know if any of you were old enough to remember, they used to jump out and run out there and pump your gas for you and take your money and clean your windshield and check your oil. And I remember in the 80s, they were trying to deploy, Esso in particular, or Exxon, was trying to deploy the initial wave of the automated gas pumps. And the consumers completely rejected it. And they had to withdraw enormous contracts and freeze a bunch of projects to roll out this automated machine that would allow gas people to come up, put the credit card in, and get their own gas. That was rejected for the first 2 to 3 years that they were rolling that technology out. Slowly but surely, though, that's all we know today, is to pull up to an automated gas pump, put our credit card in, and fill our cars.
Right.
And so I'll leave it at that.
If you have to go in, if it says see the cashier, you're like, what? No way, I don't have time for that.
I'm so mad.
My receipt.
There have been so many times where it's been like, oh, you got to go in to see. I was like, nope, I don't need gas.
Okay. I don't want to see a person.
Yeah.
No
I'm
way.
actually curious, Jeff, to build that example and to think about like restructuring industries. Were you to be offered the opportunity, would you go to a gas station that gave you that full service if you maybe paid 30 cents more or 50 cents more per gas? Would you go back to that level, high touch service? Or would you maybe like patronize a gas station more if you did get that high level of service when you came in, almost like an F1 pit crew?
So I'm waiting for Elon Musk to create a solar powered car where the outer panels are all solar panels, and I never have to stop the vehicle except to occasionally swap out my tires. And I'll never, ever have to pull over, and it will be a thing of the past when I actually dream in the old days when I was young, that we used to stop and fill up our cars. And, I think the future holds some great and interesting, but to your point, yes, I would pay for the added convenience of not having to get my hands dirty, stop, wherever I am, et cetera, and deal with the fact that, my car needs to be refilled. So on so many fronts, people will pay for the convenience and for the opportunity to save that time and spare themselves any sort of additional, I won't call it an irritation, but an action that, you know, they don't necessarily want to take the time to engage in.
I think it's interesting. I actually, on a side note on EVs, I think I'm not, well, who knows? I'm not sure what the energy, I'm not sure the physics of like a full solar car, but I do think we will take EVs seriously once we start embedding recharging into the ground. So as you're driving, you know, you're pulling off the grid, and it's using the same way that your phone, you know, some people have phones that charge by putting them on a pad as opposed to plugging them in. You know, you're driving over the road and it's recharging your car as you're driving. I think that to me, I think the physics of that works out better, but I'm not a physicist, so I do think.
Well, they're doing that with the hybrid cars. So as you're driving, the gas is, sorry, the electricity is, you know,
Yeah,
but from the ground itself, you're saying that's
embedding like electrical
pretty
fields
interesting.
into the ground.
There was an
We'll
amazing
see, I don't know,
black,
maybe 100%, maybe when solar hits a certain sort of like ability to convert, like that becomes possible. I'm not really sure of like, it's a physics problem that someone smart who watches this will like comment on it and be like, well, actually, like the number of joules that it takes out when you're driving versus the rolling speed of the friction of the, like, it's a physics problem. Someone solves it, but I do think we'll start to take it more seriously and people will start to convert en masse into EVs when we start making sort of free charging a service, and we start taking that seriously. Melanie, I know we have to leave, but Melanie, I have so many questions about like where you see certain things going that it's a shame that we can't get to them today, but at least we have another conversation coming.
yeah,
So.
I had another thing to say, but I won't. It was just a Black Mirror episode I watched where they were biking.
Don't spoil. I haven't watched yet.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna say it. It was last season, not this season.
Okay.
And they were biking, and that was actually creating power to energy to, you know, kind of run their lives. And if you did, and so this whole idea of, you know, like we have so much energy, and, you know, some people, you know, exercising and walking, and the way you talk about, it just reminded me, talk about driving, creating more energy for the car. Well, what if we as humans, you know, had some kind of like, you know, exercise machine or something where we could create energy and you know.
There's actually, I just found out, here's another fun fact for us. I just found out that what you just described is actually kind of considered an esport, where it merged, and I didn't know this. This is like, and this when I saw the picture, I was like, this looks like it happened in the 80s. Basically, the picture that they showed on Wikipedia was these two people on like stationary bikes in front of like these old TVs and just like biking, and like it was a competition of how much they could bike. But it's interesting that like when you think about it, 99% of the power we use is all solar power. It just depends when and where that solar power happened, because it's basically plants converting sun into energy that later gets used either by an animal that we eat or a plant that we eat or fossil fuel that we use. It's all basically been, very rarely do we use like thermal energy from like the Earth's founding, but like all energy. And that's the thing about EV cars. It's interesting is that like we're like sort of 20%, 23% efficient, depending on like what solar panel you use. Plants are like 100% efficient. And it's like, it's interesting to sort of say like if we were to bike, that's still solar power in some like really kind of interesting, long-winded way.
It's all interconnected, right? Yeah. That's all I'm going to say. Everything's interconnected.
Yeah. By the way, this is good stuff. You guys, we could keep going. We've already maxed out on my time. That I was expecting 30 to 60 minutes. This is excellent. Let's get together again, maybe next month and continue our conversation. Maybe we'll have other guests come in. Any final thoughts of who else we should bring in as far as marketers that you want to hear from that you think are either on the right track or you're curious what they might, what they have in mind?
Just want to say, Melanie, Sean, been an absolute pleasure meeting you guys. Really enjoyed hearing your perspectives, interesting insights. I learned and grew from today's conversation, so thank you. Bob, thanks for inviting me.
Me too. Melanie, always. Jeff, was so nice meeting you.
So interesting. This conversation is so great. Great to meet you, Jeff. And always great to hear from you, Sean and Bob.
I think in terms of like someone who I'd find interesting, I think someone from like a cutting edge company, like someone from Google X or Adobe or even, you know what, actually it could be an interesting, like an investor, like a professional investor who's like sort of, I actually know someone whose main investments are in robotics. And I think all of the investment and all of the attention has gone towards AI because it's easier to move around electrons than it is, atoms. But I do think that like robotics is the next frontier. And like it's not getting its day, it's harder to do. There's going to be, when there's failures, they're bigger failures because you had to invest more, because you had to build this team and you had to have a location because the things have to get assembled. But I do think there's no getting around robotics being really interesting. So I do think that might be an interesting component of what we're talking about. So for me, I would want to talk to an investor. I would want to pick their brains, because I do think that the only people who survive this are like the investors.
Thanks, Jeff. Any last thoughts? I know you need to run off.
I got to drop, but guys, thanks again. This was really important. We appreciate your perspectives. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining
Bob,
us. Cheers.
send me the audio.
Yep.
And I'll get it all converted using ChatGPT and turn it in to take away notes.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, Jeff.